Have you ever stared at a world map and thought you understood the planet? Well, you don't. Because the map we've all grown up with, the one hanging in classrooms and offices and even on your phone, is lying to you. It's not that map makers were trying to trick us. It's just incredibly hard to take a round globe and flatten it onto a rectangle. Something always gets distorted. But those distortions change more than just shapes and sizes. They change how we see the world. Today, we're going to look at some of the biggest map mistakes you've probably believed your whole life. From the shocking truth about Greenland, to why Africa looks smaller than it is, to how the Mercator projection secretly influences politics, culture, and even how we think about power. By the end of this video, you'll never trust a map the same way again. Let's start with the classic, Greenland versus Africa. If you pull up almost any classroom world map, Greenland looks massive, nearly the same size as Africa, or at least close. But here's the shocker. Africa is not just bigger, it's 14 times bigger. Greenland has an area of around 2.1 million square kilometers. Africa, a mind-blowing 30 million. Think about that. You could fit the entire United States, China, India, and most of Europe into Africa and still have room left. Meanwhile, poor Greenland could sit comfortably in Africa over a dozen times. So why does the map fool us? Because Greenland sits way up north, close to the Arctic Circle. On the Mercator projection, the map style most of us grew up with, land near the poles gets stretched out like elastic. The closer to the pole, the more it swells. That's why Greenland, which in reality is just a giant icy island, ends up looking like a global superpower on paper. The result? For generations, people have subconsciously underestimated Africa, a continent bursting with resources, home to more than 1 billion people, and bigger than we ever imagined. Now let's head to the United States, specifically Alaska. On many maps, Alaska looks enormous, almost rivaling the entire continental US. Some Americans even believe Alaska is larger than Texas, California, and Montana combined. Here's the truth. Alaska is big, don't get me wrong. At 1.7 million square kilometers, it's the largest US state by far. But the lower 48, the continental states, are more than 8 million square kilometers. That means the rest of the US is nearly 5 times bigger than Alaska. So why does it look so gigantic? Same reason as Greenland, latitude. Alaska sits far north, and the map projection stretches it. The shape balloons out, making it look almost the same size as half the country. It's one of the reasons why many Americans overestimate Alaska's dominance. In reality, if you were to place Alaska over a map of Africa, it would look tiny in comparison. Now let's cross the Atlantic to another surprising comparison, Europe versus South America. Look at a map and you might think Europe is at least equal in size, if not larger than South America. After all, Europe is where so much of world history supposedly happened, right? But once again, the map lies. Europe covers about 10 million square kilometers. South America, nearly 18 million. That's almost double the size. But why do we perceive Europe as bigger? Because of two things, map distortion and cultural focus. Europe sits in the northern hemisphere, so on the Mercator projection, it gets stretched and looks bigger than reality. Meanwhile, South America lies near the equator, where distortion is minimal. So the classroom map quietly cheats, making Europe look more powerful, more central, and South America look smaller and less important. This isn't just a mistake, it shapes global imagination. For centuries, maps made Europe look bigger and more dominant than it really was. That visual bias reinforced the idea of Europe as the center of the world. But Greenland, Alaska, and Europe aren't the only victims or benefactors of distorted maps. Consider Russia. On a Mercator map, Russia looks like a sprawling colossus, stretching across half the planet. And yes, it is the largest country in the world. But on the map, it appears even larger than reality. Parts of Siberia are stretched out so wide they look endless. Then there's Antarctica. On most maps, it looks absolutely massive, like it could swallow up entire continents. In reality, it's about 14 million square kilometers. Big, yes, but not as absurdly gigantic as Mercator makes it appear. Even Canada benefits from this distortion. Its northern regions expand on paper, making Canada look bigger than Africa to the untrained eye. But Africa is nearly 3 times larger. So when you put all these distortions together, you start to notice a pattern. The global north, Europe, North America, Russia, looks bigger, more dominant. The global south, Africa, South America, Southeast Asia, looks smaller, less significant. That's not just a cartographic error, that's a worldview bias. So where does all this distortion come from? It all starts with the Mercator projection. Created in 1569 by a Flemish cartographer named Gerardus Mercator, this map was a revolution. Sailors loved it because it made navigation easier. Straight lines on the map corresponded to straight compass bearings in real life. The downside, to make navigation accurate, he had to distort land sizes, and that distortion worsened the farther you got from the equator. Greenland looks almost the size of Africa. Europe looks massive compared to South America. Alaska and Canada look far larger than reality. Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia all look much smaller. And here's the kicker. This isn't just a technical mistake. It shapes politics and culture. For centuries, maps centered on Europe, enlarged Europe, and shrunk Africa and Latin America. That visual bias reinforced ideas of dominance and importance. Even today, many people in the West unconsciously believe Africa is smaller or less significant simply because of how they first saw it on a classroom map. But what if I told you there are other maps that try to fix this problem? Take the Gall-Peters projection. Unlike Mercator, it tries to show countries by their true size. Africa suddenly looks gigantic, stretching across the map in all its real-world glory. South America finally looks larger than Europe. But the trade-off, shapes get weird. Countries look stretched vertically, almost cartoonish. Another option is the Robinson projection. It tries to balance size and shape. It doesn't distort as badly as Mercator, but it still isn't perfect. The truth is, there is no perfect flat map. The Earth is round, and every flat map must distort something, whether size, shape, distance, or direction. So what have we learned? That the world map you grew up with isn't reality. It's just one version of it. Greenland is tiny compared to Africa. Alaska is nowhere near as large as it looks. Europe is smaller than South America, and the Mercator projection has been quietly shaping how we see the world for nearly 500 years. The map is not the territory, and sometimes the territory is far more surprising than we ever imagined. If you enjoyed uncovering these hidden truths, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon, because this channel is all about exploring geography in ways that will blow your mind. Thanks for watching, and remember, the world is bigger and stranger than the map shows.